Good morning, friends. Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal and Adab. This is my 183rd video on the historical facts of Belgaum Cantonment. Nothing much could I garner for Belgaum when I was in the Archives Library, Delhi in 2009-10. But when we visited Belgaum, there was a lady called Miss Nancy, an Anglo. She shared some documents with me, and since then those documents have been with me. That was the Mehta Committee report and various court cases and the files which maybe her forefathers and ancestral predecessors were holding on to. So when I was reading this report and the other documents which I dug into Belgaum, if you remember, I had mentioned that Belgaum was first made when. So we have to understand how Belgaum came in, and there is a name called the Raja of Bijapore, and way back in 16th century, he is the man who's been mentioned about creating various things in this Belgaum city or township. There is a separate history for the fort of the cantonment. In the center of the former, there are present army arsenals and their magazine holders. They have their barracks, which were completely in possession of the army when they put their military authorities when they put their foot. In 1819, the fort had already or was already holding on to several houses, and they were in the possession of the owners or the proprietors. There was a lot of open lands, and this all fell in the hands of the British after the conquest, which they presumed to, when General Munroe actually captured the fort. So the residencies of the military officers and their camping grounds were created in this fort of Belgaum city. But the people in the fort actually till date claim their title ownerships. They don't just say that we are the owners of the building, but they say we are the owners of the building along with the site, and that's since they were in existence prior to the capturing of the Raja of Bijapore. So we need to go into the Gazette of 1887 of Belgaum Cantonment. I couldn't lay hands on the same, but I saw a document in archives, and this gazette must be in the DC's office at Belgaum or at the DC office at Darwar. So these were the two major towns during the British era. Now, have they merged is a matter of. Now, friends, we need to even know whether Belgaum as a cantonment, whether it was a part of Madras Presidency or Bombay Presidency or the Bengal Presidency. To begin, the map of 1833 shows that Belgaum was always a part of the Bombay Presidency. So these files, these records which will be available there, either could be in the Pune cantonment or the Pune DC office. If not, could be because Bombay Secretariat was then created also. So the Governor General orders or anything related to Belgaum or any of these cantonments falling in Bombay Presidencies must be there in Bombay Archives Library. So please, I would request people in Belgaum to dig into this record. So by the orders of Governor General in 1819 until 1832, Belgaum cantonment was being built up. So lands were being taken, or the boundaries of the cantonment were increasing, decreasing. Mostly they were increasing. Now what does Mehta Committee speaks of? It says he examined the entire Belgaum land vernacular records in Maldar's record rooms. Now, what does this mean? Needs to be verified. Does this mean the district revenue officer? And he even goes on to saying that he researched every document over a period of a week way back in that period in 1950s. I was able to find the original payment and the survey maps of 1820-21. So 100 years and about 130 years later also these documents were there. These are very important documents. Now he says how lands were taken up for the making of cantonment, and all those zamindars or pattidars or rotwas, biswadaris were actually given land in exchange of their land. Now let's understand, when General Munroe actually conquered the Raja of Bijapore, so after conquest, who became the owner of these lands? The Raja's land is ceded to the British. But that's not the fact. One has to understand the 1765 Charter Act which the Queen of England gave when the Diwani shifted to the Britishers, and even the 1833 Government of India Act. So these reports are submitted in an Appendix B, he says. So we can find these. I request very carefully when he studied. He even prepared a map of his own. Now, where is this Mehta Committee report lying? It has every annexure A, B, C, D appendix. He has his various statements. But you are unable. He created reports for two cantonments, Belgaum and Pune. So the Pune report is there, Belgaum report is there, but they are incomplete reports. You ask the Ministry of Defence, they don't share it. You ask the Parliament House, they send you the Mehta Committee report which was tabled in the Parliament and finally debated. So it speaks nothing of Belgaum as an individual or Pune as an individual. Now Appendix 22 is approximately showing the measurements, the pamaish and the survey numbers given to these biswadaris, and I would call them zamindars or pattidars. And this land was taken over and finally given for the making of Belgaum cantonment. Now when was Belgaum cantonment made as per Mehta Committee? He says it was made in 1832 with an approximate area of 1775 acres, out of which 15 acres of land was private lands. But if we compare, the Mehta Committee report is stating that in 1819, Belgaum was made and it continued till the making till 1832. And finally in 1832, the boundary pillars were made. Under which regulation? He says regulation number 1 of 1819. Now you do something in 1819, but the regulation or the completion of those boundary pillar takes place in 1832. Now section 4 of this regulation clearly lays down the limits of military cantonment. Friends, I have been shouting on top of my voice that there are military boundary pillars and there are cantonment boundary pillars. So he says now in 1819 or 1832, the military boundary pillars were fixed by the commanding officer. And the jurisdictions of civil, criminal, revenue, everything shifted from the Zilla magistrate to the cantonment magistrate or the army authorities. These regulations were evolved, and later in section 27 of 1827, this is the Bombay regulation, which came in force on 1st September 1827. Section 21 of this regulation clearly lays down that the limits of military station, no private property is to be included in them. So again, please, it's military station, not cantonment boundary pillars. Now it's very surprising, in 1819 or in 1832, there was no decimal settlements of the 1795 order of the Governor General. Whether it was only for Bengal presidency, did we have anything to do with Bengal presidency and a similar settlement was done in Bombay presidency? We need to see those things. So by 1822, when land was being exchanged between these settlers, what I just called you, the bigger question, when was the settlements done for Belgaum or the Raja of Bijapore? Colonel Thackeray was exchanging lands with whom? With the Raja, whom they already conquered alone, or was it by the substituents who had inherited or who were in possession of those grants? So the Britishers, don't speak of anything like this here. Now Mehta Committee report states, as regard the cantonment papers, I would divide the subject of acquisition of land for the making of Belgaum cantonment into 4 parts. First part, he says, is the land included in the General Order number 99 of 2nd March 1832. This is measuring about 1400 acres of land. Then he says in 1861, a European barracks were erected and 78 acres of land was again acquired. Again in 1871, native infantry lines, 5 acres of land was acquired. Fine. 1875, another military playground was being made and approximately 262 acres of land. So if you sum up this land, does it come to the total what he actually said, about 1795? That's how it is. So that means Belgaum was being built from 1819 till 1875. It further appeared that all these pattidars were not compensated. He's writing in his report, but it is so fortunate that evidence is forthcoming to show that the Inamdars and the Watandars, they abandoned their rights towards the Britishers without claiming any compensation, he says. Very funny. First you become a grant from the Raja and then you are leaving. No, there was a rule. Like if you were not able to pay your lagan, which was a thumb rule of the Britishers, 1 acre and 1 rupee. If you were unable to pay, the land would be resumed from your ownership or your grant. Because Britishers were only keen on what? The lagan, the revenue. It may be doubted how far the action of the military authority to evict holders of government unalienated lands without compensation, except bearing some who took remission against land versus land, was strictly legal. But it may be observed that the holders were evicted before 1830. Now just imagine, in 1861, 1875, they are taking extra land. But the eviction took place of the entire 1795 acres in 1830, when Regulation 7 was passed by the Bombay government. Mehta Committee report, what I personally feel, was basically trying to look for the rights of the government. It was not trying to get the truth out. It was not behaving like a true independent Indian officer. So this country under Bombay regulation prior to 1830, the rights of the occupants of government land were not guided by the principles of the right of permanent occupancy. Now, holder of occupancy and permanent occupancy. Nowhere in Bombay Land Revenue Act, if one digs in, the word permanent occupancy is defined. It's either holder of occupancy or you are a tenant. So the chapter 17 of 1827 chapter 1 clearly justifies that accepting this status quo and the lands which were previously in the rules of the Marathas or the Peshwas, the Rotwaris were to be compensated, or were they tenants to the government land? Nothing of this, no cadastral surveys were made. So the question of compensation is very important. I don't have much about Belgaum, but would share what was shared. And I want people to wake up. This report is made much later and is admitting many things regarding land records or grants given. So he says there is no doubt that before the Government General Order of 1827, the spirit of Bengal rules was strictly followed. White Quartermaster Journal number 721 dated 25th August 1830 in Military Department in consultation with volume 17 of 1830, consultation number 35, the Bengal General Order. Now here he is talking of Bengal, 27th April 1789, and Governor General Order of Bengal of 6th August 1801. Further, 28th September 1807, White Bengal Government Gazetteer, Part 6 of 17, the Order of 1898, page 107-108, are clear points to show that in the early days, the Bengal Governor General orders were being followed in Belgaum. So the decimal settlement has to be there of 1795. Otherwise, lands could not have been acquired. So an admission that Bengal Presidency laws were being made applicable in Belgaum, if so, then why Bombay Governor General Order of 1827 was being enforced? The first map of fort in Belgaum Cantonment ranges back to 1822. Then it was created in 1858. Here he says these documents are not available. The map is not available. So he is saying I create a new map by myself. Now how much is that map to be evidently or in the court of law to stand? Tomorrow somebody non-appointed as a land settlement officer or a record of right is being made in 1850. So Mehta committee had no right to make a map. Where are these maps of 1822 and 1858? Further on, Mehta committee says that under section 266 of the Cantonment Code 1899, government land registers of leases outside bazaar area was made. And he bought an entire Belgaum Cantonment bungalows, which ranges to about 153 bungalows into this 266 lease document. How could he do that? If there is an old grant, it cannot be entered in 266. So everything is very contradictory in this state committee report. But since nobody has challenged it, it became a part of the parliamentary committee. So the cantonment properties which he says are 153 in total, and he now is talking of what are barracks and what are the gunnery area and what all he names. So lands in 1873 to 74, there is a report in Governor General number 1 of 140 5978, 16 December 1874. The file number is 1-140 of 18th of March 1904. We will continue. Now, he is naming some bungalows. Bungalow number 103. 103 was given subsequent division numbers 1031, 1032. He talks of 106, 81 and 151A, 157A, 167, 189 and so on. He keeps going on to 136, 137. So these bungalows records, he says, were prepared and they all exist in this Inamdar's record room. Now out of this 161, Earlier he was saying 153. Out of this 161, the following 25 numbers in registers. Now he's mentioned some of the bungalows whom he considers are leases. Is bungalow number 41, 81, the number changed from 81 to 185, 102/1, and he goes on naming some bungalows, 176A, 178, 179, 184, 186. So these all bungalows, he says, were finally in the possession of the army, military authorities. So these bungalows prior to anything were already in there, and there were some vacant lands also lying in there. The other 42 bungalows, he gives a whole list, and he says these bungalows, and out of their original sanction of occupation of site is forthcoming. It's very interesting. If bungalow owners want this list, it is available, that these many bungalows are having their records available. So we can always get them. Now, bungalow number 172, the cantonment magistrate should find all the original grant, which I understand was in 1890 and -91. Or take steps to induce Naroji to pass a lease. Now, bungalow number 172 was an old grant. Documents were not forthcoming. So the insistence was in 1899, ask him to convert himself into a lease. So these cases that old grants were converted into leases is on a truth fact. Following 5 bungalow owners, the holders have made acknowledgements in 1899, 43, 59, 90, 118, 135. The remaining 84 bungalows which he names, 29, 40, 161, 125, total, the original grants are not forthcoming. So there is a lot of discrepancy in the committee's report. It is not talking of facts. So friends, Belgaum people need to come up. Yes, I have 2-3 bungalow owners reports, which I will be coming up with my videos in the coming days, where the commander-in-chief way back in 1900 has said that because of adverse possession, these bungalow owners are owners of their property. Now, what does ownership or proprietorship means? So now he talks of leasehold bungalows in his report. The only building, this is very important why I am speaking this para, he says, is the new Gymkhana, a government observatory cemetery, and the new officers club. These are all based in a triangular piece between pillar number 4 and 5. Now I remember somebody in Belgaum telling me that the Gymkhana club has been on a lease and has been given a notice. So they, sorry to use these words, on a very foolish platter, went in for natural justice and took a stay from the government. They feel they've achieved something, but they don't realize they've admitted that the relation between them and the lesser is there. So they have nothing to fight. After natural justice, the government will make a panel, will finally come up with a policy, and the court will say, look, now there is a policy on STR rate. So, well, things are not arbitrarily decided, so you have nothing to fight on. Either you pay or you have the right to move away from this. So he says this road leading to the north, leading directly from the fort to the Vengarula, all these are built under proper authority and a regular lease for officers club building has been executed. Neither the Gymkhana club nor the officers club claim any private ownership on their site, and there is no sort of encroachment in these bungalows. So the question here again comes up to, what are we actually doing? So Gymkhana club, if we actually say, what are we doing? What? They have nothing to fight on. Because it's already written in this report that this bungalow is what? One needs to understand, what are we fighting on? So, these encroachments, vacant lands, and the racecourse lines, these all, leasehold bungalows are in a fix. So, if to talk of Belgaum history, there is so much to talk about it. But I would request people to go dig into these records, and then finally, we'll be in a position where we can actually come up and dig into these records. This committee report is lying in the DC's office. So I would request everybody to please dig into this record. Thank you.